What is good, people? Emil is here with the pre-show of episode 33. This week we got an amazing guest with us called CC, who will be talking with us about character creation. No, the CC does not stand for character creation. Or does it? I may have to ask him somewhere. And it's an amazing episode. Nils and I both talked after the recording and both said that we were mind blown by what he told us. Before we dive into that, however, I want to inform you that this week on the 25th of September, Why Your World Matters 2 will be held at 3 p.m. EDT, that's 9 p.m. CET, with 6 amazing world builders on www.twitch.tv/SteamSage1. Go to either the DoubleDM Twitter or Jason Zollinger Twitter to find out more about participants and the panel itself. Also, 2 announcements for us. We have a Ko-Fi now. So if you ever feel the need to send us money for our show, to tip us a little bit on the side, an extra, and leave us a nice message with it, you can do that there. We are also working on a website, which is already reachable under www.doubledm.com. It's far from optimized and perfect, and we still have a lot to do. But with a lot of new content coming on the DoubleDM wave, we wanted the place to contain it all in one place. And one last thing, if you haven't already, why not throw us a nice review and 5 stars our way? It helps us get the show in front of more people. Thank you. And now, let's dive into episode 33, Character Creation.
Hello and welcome to the 33rd episode of DoubleDM Pod. With me is, as usual, Emil. How are you today?
I am here. I'm good.
Very nice. Did anything special happen to you last week?
Special? Nope, not really, I think. Nah, normal week for me.
What does normal week for you mean?
A session, more thinking about Ttrpgs and work. Oh, one thing, with friends yesterday just finished the first half of the 3rd season of Attack on Titan. And since we are 4 people watching together, it's very hard to actually schedule that. So we actually just watch like 6 episodes a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday watched 9 episodes, and yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
I mean, Attack on Titan is great.
Yes.
It's just insane.
And the 3 people I watch it with are great as well, and it's fun.
I can imagine.
Especially as the person that has watched the whole series already and is just rewatching it because it's fun.
You pick up on all the details.
They don't know anything, and I love hearing their theories about stuff, and I'm like, my friend, are you sure about that?
It was the same as at the time as we watched season 4 together, or the final season, which it is called. You watched it already, and I didn't.
Yeah,
so,
I watched it when it released, and we started watching it when it was fully out, and just watched it in like two days or something.
Yeah, it's great. And
so
I think we both had a session 0, if I remember correctly, about the Vampire the Masquerade mini campaign.
Yeah, we did. We still have to do the relationship map though.
Yeah, I'm still thinking on that.
We didn't do that in
100% sure. 0. But I'm excited for this one. This will get different than the other TTRPGs I played. To say at the least, different.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing is, so far I don't have any plan for the story as to what's gonna happen, because I still need the relationship map from you all. Because we still need to do that, because we didn't have time for that. So we will do that at a later date at some point. Yeah, it's a different system from what we are used to.
Yeah,
it's a system that very easily prioritizes, like, it's on the book, personal horror, so basically personal stories. So it will go deep. That's why the relationship map is so important, right? You need this map to actually make a good story for the characters, because the story revolves around them and is only driven by them. So you need this map to actually get NPCs, villains, and all that stuff for your game as a storyteller.
Yeah, I'm excited how this is going to turn out. You'll have everything you need by Saturday for me.
Okay. I will hold you accountable for that.
Yeah, you can. And then I had another session 0, actually. last Saturday in person, and the session 0 right after that. And I used the or one possible end campaign fight as an introduction.
Mm-hmm.
So to show them how they could in some way fail and then revert them back to the start of the campaign.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, we created characters at the session 0, and then I said, now you got your characters in mind. Now imagine the most powerful version of them. And then they fought the big bad evil guy and got utterly destroyed.
So you made them basically make whatever level character sheets and then revert them back to level 1? Or was it just in their head?
It was just in their head, because then it would be too complicated because 2 new players are in there. And it would take a little too long to actually level them up to level 20 and then revert. But they all managed to get what every character could have done at level 20. So that's good. And yeah, they got utterly destroyed, and now they're back at level 3. And in the vision or in the dream they had, they known each other for a very long time, were friends and stuff like that. But when they woke up, they have never seen the dudes, never heard of them, but we're all in the same tavern.
So this is, you said it's a vision, right? It's a possibility that happens.
Exactly.
And it's a possibility that can happen. So now the question becomes, how do they stop it? How do they do not fail? How do they succeed the next time, right?
Yeah.
That's the premise. The thing about that is it shows exactly what we've been saying for like the last 6 episodes or something. Choices matter, right? You need players and player characters need to make choices, and those choices lead to an outcome, and that outcome is definite. That's the outcome you get when you make those choices.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. You showed them what could happen if they make the wrong choices, in quotation marks, because right, there's no wrong and right, but you showed them a wrong choice. You showed them a bad outcome that results of their actions they took. They want to prevent that. They don't know the actions, however, so you could still just basically reuse that ending you played with them if they make the choices leading to that ending. Yes?
Yeah.
Can I ask you this? And maybe your players of that campaign need to stop listening to the next 2 minutes or something. We give them a bit of time. Do you have some actions planned that will eventually lead to that? Like,
not yet.
But there will be.
But there will be.
So you will have choices. You plan for choices that, for example, obviously choices aren't option A or option B. They are option A to double Z or something.
Yeah.
They have a lot of choices, but you basically have, if they really choose to pursue this route of helping this NPC is though a spy for the villain, that will lead to this outcome. As an example.
Oversimplified, but yeah, something like this. There will be a possibility that what they have seen will happen if they take the right path in quotation marks for that outcome to show it.
But like you said, you don't know that path yet. That
exactly.
path will obviously reveal itself in play and as they go.
Exactly. I have a rough idea where the path is or how the path needs to go to get to the point, but yeah, not clear choices yet.
It's this thing of, you know that there's a possibility for this ending to happen again.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen for that ending to happen again without making sure that ending happens again, right?
Exactly.
Nice. I like that.
I'm excited to how this will turn out.
Is that a campaign you told me before about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
With this, I have now 3 campaigns I'm mastering simultaneously.
I have Vampire, Fate, D&D, and one-shots. So I have 3 plus the one-shots I run, plus a 5th campaign I can't talk about. I've had a session as well.
Tell me about it.
I've had a session of my Phantoms of Chaos campaign. That is the D&D campaign I run. And it was a fun one. My players ended this last session on them being in a forest in the mountains. One of them stepping into a hole and basically making a loud noise. And then they realized someone else is in this forest. And they were just like, and they were calling out to their friend, hey, did you hurt yourself? Because there were several people in this forest. And yada yada yada. The rogue sneaked a little bit ahead and saw a big clearing in the forest. And there was a literal military camp in there, hissing flags of a nation they didn't know, or of a person they didn't know. They were like, he didn't know how many, but they were like tents for like 4 or 5 people each, and there were like 20 tents of this, and they roughly estimated 100 soldiers are here, and they are not of the nation they are in, so they are basically trespassing on different territory. And they were like, oh shit. And my players have learned that they need to pick their battles in this campaign. I've given them a lot of battles that they can win. They can always win. That's one of the things I make sure. But if they choose to avoid combat, it's often very, very rewarding for them, especially if it's a combat they should avoid. Like if I put an ancient red dragon in front of my players, they are smart enough to not attack it, right?
Yeah.
And they sneaked around, and they realized that there were two roads leading to this camp. One was the one they were actually on before. They encountered a literal military gate. Someone's walled off the mountains there, and only let some carts through. They knew that those were bandits, so they made the conclusion that the bandits are working together with this military camp. So maybe those are all bandits. And they also know from pamphlets, the newspaper in the city, that there is some kind of bandit uprising in the country. Some kind of revolution maybe going on, or hinting at that there will be a revolution. So they obviously were careful because they knew these people, they were outnumbered. The players were outnumbered. They knew that these people are good, and they knew that there are even more than just the people in this mountain or in the mountains. So they quickly ventured out, sneaked away, and basically bolted it for the next big street so they can get to this capital city, because they are the only ones that know of this. So they then bolted it through the forests and spent like 5 days off track in the mountains, surviving on the least food they had, nearly no fresh water for like 2 days. They had to take off rations, like we talked about in the last episode with Matt. In my game, we track ammo, we track encumbrance, we track all of that stuff, because this type of they run 5 days through the forest unprepared happens often in this campaign so far. So I need to have some kind of saying, hey, this is not what you are planning. So like anyone can go into a forest for a day and survive, but try that for 5 days. I can tell you that that's not quite easy.
Definitely with the having the thought in your head that maybe there's an uprising, a revolution or something like this not that far behind you.
Yeah, so they made it to the street, and then they played out a bit of finding stuff, getting back to stuff. They left their horses at the village before venturing in the mountains, because they thought it was too dangerous to take the horses. They had to get their horses back, so they went back to that town, basically where they started 1.5 weeks ago. And the thing is, in my campaign world, just like in Faerun as well, weeks are 10 days. So they were like 15, they spent 15 days in the mountains, roughly.
Yeah.
They were like nearly a whole month away from the capital city where they left before to get back to the mountains, and now they are back. And now the question is, what do they do? They have made a lot of progress, I think, just not clear progress. They've found a weird shard of some kind of demonic energy. They were in a temple. They know about the bandit camp, and they've known a bit, but yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting what happens next for them. And I believe, if I am looking at my calendar correctly, we have only 2 sessions before that group gets into person again.
Very nice.
The one on the 4th of October and the one on the 17th of October, if that's the one we want to take with the group. I don't know, but basically on Halloween we will get back in person, and I can't wait for it.
Understandable. Shall we get into today's topic?
Yes.
All right, then we'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back. We are with our guest right now, CC. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, howdy there, fellas. I am CC from @CCdotdot on Twitter, and I am a schmucky tabletop one-shot dev. I've got a little ditty out there called the DMPC is Dead, which is a Session 0 mini-game that you can play to kind of establish inter-character dynamics between your player characters in Session 0.
That sounds cool.
Well, thank you.
Then let me just ask this question. How does it work? Because it says the DMPC is dead, so...
That he certainly is. In the DMPC is dead, in the exploration of your inter-character dynamics, what happens is you show up in an instance in time where all you know is that the DMPC is dead. This is, in essence, the end of some little first arc that your characters went through together. All you know at the end is the DMPC is dead, and you roll to kind of get your impression of the situation. The ultimate essence of the game is that our characters are dependent on their gestures, how they act in moments in time. And so if you strip away all the details of the campaign and kind of look at how they act in these nebulous moments when someone who they've known for a long time dies, you can get a sense of what their true essence is beyond just the details of their race and class.
Okay, very interesting. And you said it is system agnostic, right?
It is system agnostic, yes. Running the DMPC is dead will create the intercharacter dynamics for a set of characters that can go into any system, be it D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, or even some great indie stuff like Slayers and Blades in the Dark.
Nice. So one other question I though have before we get into any discussion about our topic today is how did you get into TTRPGs?
I got into TTRPGs a long time ago by matter of circumstance, really. Stumbled upon a little ditty on Steam called Tabletop Simulator, and I'm like, hey, this would be a great way to play some card games. So I jumped into that, biddied about, and eventually encountered people running D&D games out of Tabletop Simulator. Got into it, really connected with it, and from there on, I very quickly became a forever DM.
Then you're perfect on this show, because I think Niels and I never get to play anyway.
Yeah, welcome
Never.
to the club.
Absolutely never.
It's funny that as a forever DM, you create a game or a mini game that says the DMPC is dead, though.
Oh, yes. I had played with DMPCs before, and I started to realize their strengths and weaknesses. Their strengths being that they can have a very strong narrative impact, and their weakness being that they eat up a lot of system time and roles. And at some point, I figured, hey, why don't we address what the DMPC can do very quickly in our character creation, and then maybe, have much less DMPC interaction.
That's interesting, because you hear a lot online that the NPCs are never good. Do you agree with that?
I really don't. The reason being because they do have a narrative use. You run into trouble when the DMPC begins to eat up system action time. When he's doing too many roles, or she's doing too many roles, or they're doing too many roles, and eating up too many moments. So if you play it just right, the presence of an NPC of any type that is within, hands distance of the players isn't bad. And they just need to be eating up an appropriate amount of system playtime.
Yeah, okay.
But I think in general, there is a little trap there because, or most of the time, if you start using a DMPC which is fixed in the story, it can easily lead to the DM trying or using this DM PC to not steal actively the moments, but try to build the character a way which would help the characters in the story or the encounter they have and steal the spotlight, even willingly or unwillingly.
That's why eventually you need to kill them.
Yeah.
Okay, so our topic today being character creation and what that all encompasses. I would like to ask both of you, with CC going first, what does it mean to create a character for a TTRPG?
For me, character creation starts with the gesture. The gesture being a moment of emotive expression that represents the character. In tabletop roleplay, especially these big combat-oriented systems, we tend to take a detail-oriented approach to character creation. We obviously start with things like deciding their race, class, and background, and that's good. But even as we begin to look at character history, there is a detail-oriented approach to it. We decide series of events in time that define them more so than their gesture. When I talk of gesture, I mean an overarching concept in aesthetic, something I actually kind of glinted from, of all places, an episode of Bob's Burgers. It is season 5, episode 8, midday run. And it's actually the B story that matters, in which Linda has this little art gallery that she's running on the poster board, and Bob wants to get on it, but Linda keeps shooting him down because he thinks his doodles are silly. Bob goes to Edith Cranwinkle, the town cranky artist, and asks her to help him learn how to draw. And since this does everything she could possibly want in life, help people learn to be creatively expressive and torture Bob, this is great. She leads him into their studio to give him a lesson, and he gets an eyeful. He gets an eyeful of naked Edith, because nude art is a great way to learn certain facets of illustration. She instructs him that, in his terror, that what he needs to do is draw the gesture, draw the essence, and then she uses a different word, but she means draw the details. This is a way of, basically capturing something in time. Find the gesture will tell you what the essence is, and then the essence has the scaffold for the details. And so I think what tabletop role players really need to do is take a few steps away from the detail-oriented approach to character creation and gesture as their characters. Discover their voice, discover their posturing, and then decide the details from that.
Interesting, Niels.
I had to think about it, or I have to think about it a little, because what does it mean to create a character starts with an idea for me, with the idea of a character, because then you start to create it already, even if you just have a baseline or a general concept in mind. And then you can go into either you start with the details, or you could first start with a personality, the way they would react, they would talk, they would act on specific topics and stuff like that. And then go into the more detailed stuff like stats and abilities and all that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we had right here now are two very diverging, I don't know, can I say starting point, CC, to when you say gestures? Is that your starting point for a character? I
would say, yeah. What comes to mind is their banter, how they stand up, how they emote themselves well before, oh my goodness, there's a gesture. Well before I start to think about history. I think the big thing for me is that I focus on their emotive qualities well before I decide anything that happened in their history.
Mm-hmm. So how I go about character creation is to throw my idea in the mix. I think it's when I created Noelle, which for long-time listeners of the show is a character they know, which is a swashbuckling rogue I have. She has a big energy of edgy rogue in her, but she tries to suppress it. Like Noelle's core essence is she is a murderer. She is more or less a monster, you could say, but she doesn't want to be one and tries to not be one, but she knows she's capable of being one. And that was basically what I started with. I wanted a character that had the capability of being this evil, or not evil, but bad force in the world, a rogue. I wanted her to be a character that really shows that someone can change. Someone can change a lot over time. She has a darkness in her, but definitely wants to get rid of that darkness. And then I decided from there what would come of it. Like, how would she express herself? What has happened that made her like this, like she is now? And I draw a lot from what is the core essence, what is the core concept I want to play, without focusing on any stats or race or anything like that. So what I think with that is we have more or less 3 different approaches to character creation. And now let me throw out the question is, why do you think that is, that we have different approaches?
Why do we have different approaches? We're very, very close. We're all kind of circulating around a central thesis, but we're stepped out by, just one lunge or so from it. And I dare imagine the reason why I am divergent is because I do not write character histories at all. For session 1, I do not have any historical details about them. I don't know what they've done yet. I tend to need 2 or 3 weeks before I'm comfortable deciding what actually happened in their past. I want to banter with them. I want to do that posturing to really get the gestures that express the essence before I go deciding the historical details.
So you, like you said, you don't write character histories, so you don't write them at the beginning. You write them like after you've met the character yourself, had some time with it, and then you still go into writing one, or do you never really create a background?
It's a bit of a mix. I might never sit down and put the details onto text, but by step by step, I'll begin to build a historical understanding of them and put that into play. What I basically try to do is find the linear narration that exists from point I start playing them to point I am now, and then project that backwards to represent everything that happened before I started playing them.
Okay, Niels, do you create backstories? I know you do. We talked about it in our backstory episode, but I would just wanted you to say it again.
Yeah, I do, but not as detailed as one might do it in general. I usually just have a point where I come from, like a family or a orphanage or something like that, which then leads to why my character is shaped the way it is shaped in its personality, its desires, his manners or her manners, or the manners of the character in general, and what type of skills they have. It all comes from a starting point, which I set in stone basically really early, and then just write down little bullet points along the way which might fit, and then decide after I played the character 1 or 2 times how I would like the backstory to be.
I mean, the thing is, what I always read on the internet is, on Twitter or Reddit, is people screaming about the length of a backstory. Don't write 5 pages. Write at least 2 pages and all that stuff. And I'm always like, why? Why do we even have to limit the people that want to write a backstory, or have to give the people that don't want or don't need to write a backstory? Why do we force them to? I think that as long as the player is playing a character and not just the stat block, I'm fine with it. And they can write me a 20-page backstory for that character they have if they want to. I won't stop them, but I will also not force them to. I want something, right? I want, like Niels said, a place. I want some things that I can incorporate into the game, because I believe that when I have such things that they have from their past, I can engage them on it. This is your father. This is your home village that has just been destroyed by a dragon. That would evoke emotion in a character, right? I always say the history also shapes the character, but especially in TTRPGs is you don't want to set your character too in stone to limit yourself from playing, because we are still there for playing. We're not there to write backstories.
Yeah, ultimately, I tend to say that backstories are speculative fiction until they're not. I am the big radical in that I tend to not even have the details that you're asking, and that can be a bit of a hard sell. I have kind of been bullied for it, no less, with people that expect a certain degree of backstory. There's this one game I joined, and it was a bit of a kerfuffle. I talked with the DM about the fact that I really don't put a lot into backstory, but I'm really open to being received as a member of a certain faction if you think it fits, or, a descendant of a certain individual if you think it fits. And he was like, okay, you do that, while other people wrote, 2 to 3 pages of backstory that he wanted. And this DM really kind of went out to make me pay for my position. My openness is something that he capitalized with a lot of bad faith. He says, oh yeah, well, here's the truth of it. You are part of this faction that's hated. Here's the truth of it. Your father is someone who's hated. And he continuously forced negative things upon me that I don't really think fit the essence I was going for, because I was playing a pretty jovial individual who didn't have a lot of controversy in their life, but I was quote unquote open to it. I was obviously open to something that was presented in good faith, but there was some desire to make me pay for my novel approach. That was only one time, and I dare imagine I'll never see it again. But as I am the very, very far end of this spectrum, no details, I don't have any parents. I don't come from a village. I am merely the essence of my banter and posturing until you give me enough time to figure something else. Someone saw fit to say, no, that's not correct, and I'm going to make you pay for it.
Okay, I want to engage on that really quickly with my point on that, because if anyone that is listening is that type of DM, fuck you.
Oh, goodness.
+1 on that.
I can't understand why you would like actively try to make the play for a player miserable just because they have a different playstyle than you. Like if that DM doesn't like your style of play, which okay, one can agree on that. Maybe he doesn't. Okay, fine. Then tell me, and we can work that out as adults, as real people, and not through petty shit like, yeah, your character is just hated even though it doesn't fit with the character theme. Like, why would someone do this sort of thing? Just if they really want the backstory, then they can just tell you that, and you can decide if the table is for you or not, and it will spare anyone at the table, you, the DM, and all the other players included, just the slog that is him torturing you with all that dumb stuff.
I've got pretty broad shoulders, so I was able to suffer the session and then make myself scarce afterwards. But, you know, in the tabletop roleplay community, there is a preponderance of individuals that are so certain that their way is the right way that a deep, negative, bad faith response comes out when confronted with novel takes on the situation. And as radical as I am, as much as I say, fuck writing backstories, I do make a great effort to work with people who are backstory heavy. One of my greatest roleplay experiences was because my no backstory to start approach meshed so well with his well-written long-form backstory throughout this session. This was a great, great, great experience in Tomb of Annihilation that I'd love to tell if you'll have me.
Sure, go ahead.
Hell yeah. So, Tomb of Annihilation, the world's gonna end. There's this death curse as is presented in the content of Tomb Annihilation. There is going to be possibly one big spoiler, and I will prompt you guys right before I get into it. But for the most part, this should be spoiler free. So we coalesced in the land of Chult to go on the great adventure to the Tomb of Annihilation. And our characters started coming together as they do. Someone prompted me, after hearing about my character, Liam Layford, a Raven's Queen Warlock, and all around slightly cartoonish villain, that they wanted to be my minion. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this. I'm a cartoon villain. You're my minion. Let's go have some fun. As they were Raven Queen Warlock, those are things I kind of just picked out of the ether to establish his edgy cartoon villainy aesthetic. I consolidated one detail about him very early on, and that's that he hated the undead. That's why he's here. He hates the undead. And that evolved throughout the adventures in Chult to something quite a broad and amazing backstory. Soon after, we were presented with the thesis of the adventure. The adventuring company that wished us to explore the death curse came to us and asked for our help, and we negotiated the details of our contract as you do. And I had this cartoonishly villainous way of getting something out of the contract. I asked the adventuring company to ban the use of resurrection magic within their company, because an extension of my hatred of the undead was a hatred of anything that artificially extends life. This was my thesis of the Raven Queen in this game. She's the god of final destination. Everyone dies at a certain time in a certain way, and ain't nothing you can do about it. And we played on that for a while. We went on our adventures, we killed undead dinosaurs, we had a good time, and eventually my minion started exposing her backstory. In her backstory, she was the daughter of a pirate king, a very, very infamous pirate king within the land. And she was trying to become as much as a villain as he was. That's why she entered my employment. I am a cartoonishly villainous individual, and she seemed like she could learn something or do some evil with. And I had an idea. We had a dynamic, and she had a dynamic with her father, and I thought, what if I inverted that? And I deduced that I was the son of a minion. So just like she's the son of a great villain, I'm the son of a minion. She becomes a minion, I become a villain. And we basically had converse stories going on that really described our dynamics. It's why I was so ostentatious. It's why I was so villainous. I know what it's like to be a minion. And I was taking that with me throughout the adventure.
Okay, that is, I think, a great example of what I would just describe as, because you made that you are the son of a minion basically up in the moment or while in play at least, right?
Basically, yeah.
That's, in my opinion, one great example of characters always grow in play. You can't write a static character in the beginning and then expect to play them in the adventure from start to finish, because if you do that, then you can also write a fan fiction about your character and don't have to play a TTRPG, because I've talked about this in the last few episodes a lot. TTRPGs are about taking risks and making choices, right? You are presented with a choice, and the most fun is for me in a TTRPG is when I make a choice. The outcome doesn't even matter. I don't know if I fail or succeed or whatever, but having the opportunity to make a choice based on what my character knows, based on what my character would do, that's the fun of playing. And I mean, now even there comes a meta plane to it, because you as a player made the choice that your character also was now the son of a minion. That's a choice you made. And I think that shows greatly that TTRPGs are about making choices, having fun with making those choices, and letting characters grow in play.
I think the one thing I'd like to add to that is it was a collaborative effort. Had I decided so long ago at the beginning of the adventure that he was a minion, but obviously I never could have, that would have never come to me unless this had evolved. Well, then that is a single author decision right at the start. Waiting a bit to define my history until this moment when Molly revealed to me that she was the son of a pirate king, a great villain, is what informed me of this opportunity. I would not have been a minion had she not revealed so many sessions in that she was the son of a villain. Because being the converse of her story really just made our character dynamic all the more special. And you can't deliberate those things. You can sit at session 0 for hours and hours trying to find the perfect character dynamic, but until you actually see the characters in play, it's all just speculative fiction.
And I think this example is a perfect example for how a backstory heavy and a really no backstory character can give everybody at the table something to go off of for role play or story reasons. The DM usually, or most DMs, look for something in the backstory to tie the characters to the story. But if this happens in play, you don't need to tie them to the backstory because the characters do this themselves. And this is a great example that you don't need a backstory to tie yourself to a campaign if you do it through in-character relations.
Yeah, we were really tied together by our essence. We were an interesting bunch in Chult. We were all kind of sort of evil, and more than one of us worshipped different death gods. There was someone who worshipped the god of bookkeeping of death. They keep the records of death. Someone worshipped Kilanshi, the drow god of death. And I worshipped, of course, the Raven Queen. So in a great, great way, we were kind of like the Doom Squad of Chult. There's a reason that none of the good guys could get to the Tomb of Annihilation and defeat the evils there within. And that was because they were too soft. We survived Chult because we were hardened by our essence. We were jaded. We were able to make big sacrifices without it wearing on us. And that's truly the only way that the world was saved, because we were united by our essence, that we press on. We don't get sentimental. We do what we need to do for our gods of death.
Nice. Sounds definitely very interesting to me. I have a question though, because you've mentioned the words gesture and essence a lot so far.
Yep.
So can you elaborate a bit more on both of those terms, what they actually mean?
All right. Certainly can. Well, in aesthetics, the gesture is the container of essence. When you do something, when you pose, you are creating a gesture, but that pose then contains the essence of you in that moment. Going back to the episode of Bob's Burger where Edith Cranwinkle is so salaciously naked before Bob's Burger, she's posing seductively with just the right amount of covering in all the right places to make it PG-13. She's got her hand up, she's got her legs strewn out, and this gesture is emoting her sensual essence. So the gesture is something that we do. It's a cadence of our voice. It's a posture that we take that acts as the container of our essence. And that is why the gesture forward way of creating characters, I believe, reveals essence quicker. You take a gesture, and within it is the essence. You might not see it immediately. You might need to make a couple more gestures, but the entirety of essence is aesthetically within the gesture. This is not true of the detail. The details are inside of the essence. And so when you go take a detail-oriented approach to character creation, what you're doing is you're creating a scatter plot that you then inductively reason your way to essence with. So from gesture, you may deduce essence, but with details, it's inductive reasoning towards essence. And characters are ultimately essence. That's where we need to get to understand them and what they're going to do.
Okay. So you said a character is an essence just now. So now, what are some examples in your... do you have a great example? You had your cartoonish villain, right? The essence of that character is cartoonish villain?
It's a little bit bigger than that. And as I gestured more, I discovered even more about him. But it really was by the way he talked and the way he postured that it was revealed. The full essence of him kind of was revealed a little more through the rest of the campaign. We kept on fighting, we kept on going, and eventually we got to the Tomb of Annihilation. What we did to get into the Tomb of Annihilation eventually cost us an NPC friend. They died on the way. And this one was tricky. Prior to deaths that had happened before, we lost our minions, our goons, and a couple early PCs that we hadn't quite, gotten ourselves attached to yet. But this death, right at the precipice of the Tomb of Annihilation, kind of hurt, because we had developed a friendship with them. And I was forced to look at what my relationship with my god was, because the Raven Queen, as I presented her, is the goddess of Final Destination. People die at a certain point in a certain way, and that's that. There's no fanfare about it. Yeah. And I was basically completely nonchalant about our good friend dying. And this started to reveal a greater essence, why he was a warlock of the Raven Queen. This one, once again, is something that just sort of developed in the moment, but I concluded my father, who was a minion, he died. He died a very sudden minion, hilarious death. And that affected me, not because I liked him, but because I didn't. It was revealed that Liam's father was given a funeral, and this bugged him for some reason. His mother mourned his father for weeks, months, and it ate at him because his father was awful. His father was a terrible person. He was a schlocky minion who served a terrible lord who did all kinds of zany things. And he had to wonder, why was this man given a funeral and why was he mourned? He needed something that would remove this discrepancy from his life, and that was the Raven Queen. The Raven Queen taught him that people died for essentially stochastic reasons at certain points in time. time. And this look at death healed the discrepancy. His father didn't deserve that funeral. He didn't deserve to be mourned. And he was mourned because his mother just didn't understand the true nature of the universe. And that was his essence. It was not just his comedic villainy, but the comedic villainy started to, those are the gestures, they started to hint at it. His true essence was diffusing the discrepancy that his father deserved a funeral. He needed a religion. He needed a frame of looking at the world that made that wrong in order for him to heal. And that was his essence.
And you've talked about this. I can see that how the essence that you discovered later now explains the details. If I got you correctly, he's a warlock of the Raven Queen. And then the gestures of not liking resurrection, not liking undead, because he's
a pretty dense character, I'll give you that.
Yeah, but it's interesting to think about, because he didn't like his father. That created the questions around the funeral. That created the connection to the Raven Queen, or then came the connection to the Raven Queen. Then came with that, obviously, also the understanding of that death comes at some point and there's no stopping it necessarily. And while, resurrection and undead are both defiances of that final destination. But you created those gestures of not liking the undead and resurrection first.
Yeah, they just kind of came to me. They seemed to capture what I was kind of going for. This kooky, kind of comically evil guy. There's one thing I'd like to backtrack. Way back in my early nascence, I didn't want him to be comically evil for no reason. I just didn't know what that reason was yet. I wanted something at the end to make sense of all of his comic evil. But I had to search through it by posturing with him, by revealing his essence through gesture. And at that moment when Floats on Water, he was a homebrew NPC, died, I started to see it. I can't mourn this man, because if people deserve to be mourned, that means my father deserved to be mourned. And no, I can't do that. This is my religion, and I won't falter on it.
Very interesting. I'm gonna be honest. When you said that gestures first as character creation, I didn't understand what that meant. But now I finally get to see what you mean by that and how it creates a character in a way different way than I always used to create characters. That way is very different from how I do it and from how I have always done it, but I think it's given me a lot to think about already on character creation in it of itself.
Yeah, it really opens you up to a different way of storytelling that can be pretty dramatic. And let me just put the cap on it with the conclusion of our Tomb of Annihilation adventure. So Floats on Water died, and I had some problems with my party because I was unwilling to mourn him. That bugged even my minion, to the degree that she made this decision that she'd start taking paladin levels because she was starting to have contrary views of the world from me. She was starting to be a little bit autonomous, and she confronted me with something big, basically on another gesture that I made somewhere. And I think this is a pretty small spoiler. There are wisps in the Tomb of Annihilation. And Molly asked me, what are wisps? And I said that sometimes the gods of death are incapable of shepherding souls to their respective afterlife. And that's where wisps are created. This was just something I sort of made up on the moment. And my goodness, a couple sessions later, Molly calls me on this so damn hard. I have had such a staunch religious view on the absence of mourning, on the god of final destination for so long, and we were about to go into that battle, and everyone wanted to swear on Floats, and I didn't. And she gets up on my face and says, well, what about the wisps? You know, you said your gods of death make mistakes. Where does that fit in? And Liam was floored. His minion was getting in his face very, very directly and challenging his religion. And this is where the final moment comes. I create the final piece of my backstory that brings everything together in such a beautiful way. When my father died, he wasn't the only one. My sister died as well. She was also a young minion in the Lord's retinue, and they died doing some zany, villainous thing. I, however, loved my sister while hated my father. And I hated that they were mourned in the same manner. My sister deserved more. She deserved more tears. She deserved better fanfare, while my father deserved to be thrown in a ditch. And I then confronted that with my new understanding. Sometimes the gods make mistakes. The god of Final Destination is not always correct. There are outliers. Sometimes people don't deserve to die the way they do in the time they do, and sometimes they fucking do. And with that information, I looked back to Floats, and I made the exception. The gods make mistakes, and Floats on Water does not deserve to die. But you know who goddamn well does? A Sararak. And then the final battle happened.
Oh, that sounds like an awesome story altogether. I just had goosebumps. It's insane.
Yep.
I have to agree with Niels.
And that just shows how enveloping not having a backstory can be, and how it can further the story even if you don't have one from the beginning, I think.
Yep. I've had a player at my table for like 7 years now. In one of my friend groups. We've met each other in high school, and they came to us and wanted to play with us. I was just starting up a sci-fi campaign, and we played with her. She created a character that in the game there was a flaw, you could say, that said you were a pacifist, which meant you get minus 10% to all weapon checks. You don't want to kill people. Okay, she then said, okay, yeah, well, I'm a doctor, I'm a pacifist, I don't touch weapons at all. And over the course of those 6 years of campaign, 6 years of campaign is very long.
Oh, yes, it is.
She more and more started to hate that bit about herself. To hate the bit that she said, I don't want to touch weapons. And the problem was that this game was very combat oriented. Being a pacifist in a combat-oriented game it created a lot of interesting moments, it created a lot of interesting character moments, but it also created a lot of boring character moments when she couldn't literally pick up a weapon by any means. And she came to me after that and said, well, that was shit. The game was fun, but that character I created, it was also her first character, you have to say that.
Yeah, of course.
It was not ideal. And I think especially everyone learns a lot about character creation after doing it a few times, because at the beginning if I have new players, someone always asks me, what character am I supposed to play? And I always draw a blank as a DM when I get asked, what character am I supposed to play? Because if I tell you, do you want to play that character? It's your decision. You have to make the first decision yourself. What do you want to do? Or what essence do you want to convey? What gestures do you want? Anything really. You need to make those decisions all yourself, right? DM can't hand you the character you want to play. I can hand you a character and you can play that. I can't answer the question what you want to play. So now the question becomes, CC, that style you have of character creation, I already told you that it's kind of eye-opening for me and very new to the whole normal discussion I always have about character creation. So how did that style develop for you? Was it always there? Did you start off in a different way? How did it develop?
How did it develop? You know, I dare say that a lot of this came from that Tomb of Annihilation game. The DM wasn't asking for backstories, and for whatever reason at the time, I just wasn't in the mood to do so. And so I decided I wanted to, not labor myself with the backstory. I just want to get into this idea of playing a certain essence and gesturing about in the way that fits it. And after that, fantastic roleplay experience, I've been trying to approach most of my games in that way. As they say, a good roleplay experience can change the way you play.
Yeah.
Maybe even to a certain degree, change the way you look at the world.
And it can change the way you look at the game as a whole, because you use your approach or your way of character creation. It just gives you a completely different approach to the whole game, even or to the whole world and the whole system itself, because you start to think about different stuff, not detailed enough or not detailed in the system itself, but more like general things you would like to play. It's a whole different approach to the classic or standard way of creating a character.
Yeah. One thing that came out of this is I started to create characters that were system-agnostic. I would get an idea going, and it wasn't quite a promise that it would then be best played played in D&D. It could be best that it's played in Slayers or in Blades in the Dark or Monster of the Week, those kind of indie games that are out there. And with these system-agnostic characters ready to go, my way of playing tabletop roleplay completely changed. I very quickly started to get in diversifying my systems and the way I play. So just making that little change can not only change how you play D&D, it can make you so much more open to all the great indie stuff that's out there.
And with that being open to everything or more thing out there in the TTRPG thing, can you give any advice to GMs and players for character creation in general? Give us the essence of how you would approach character creation for GMs and players.
I would suggest writing something that isn't necessarily a linear narration of character events. When people think backstory, that's what they do. They jump up and they write a series of linear events that happened in the past that define why their character is the way they are now. I would really suggest that people start considering other forms of literary expression to capture their characters. I would suggest that people write soliloquies that their characters say, to write streams of consciousness that their characters are experiencing, or to write even a dream sequence that they have. Maybe they're dreaming about their past, but not all the details are actually right. It's just the way they remember them.
Mm-hmm. Now that is interesting because what I do for, well, I don't know if it really adds to that, but it just came to mind. I have, before every session, I ask my players 3 questions that they have to answer in their character. What's your favorite color? What's your whatever? And what's your darkest fear? And what's your favorite food? What one decision in your life would you want to erase? And the thing is that while they all handed me backstories, none of those questions get answered through that backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And they can then, to develop their character further, look at these questions and answer them however they want. They answer them in the session for me, and then they can write it as notes, but some of them take that note and then really write a stream of consciousness from that. Okay, for example, one question was, what would your parents say about you in this exact moment when they saw you? And one wrote, okay, they would say they are proud. But why are they proud? What would they do? Why? And all that stream and further development through that simple question. Now, that doesn't happen in character play. So it's slightly different, or actually very different from what you would do probably. But I can see similarities at least.
Yeah, I'm seeing the similarities as well. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. It's a weird idea. I think I saw it on Reddit once for ask your players questions about their character that they have to answer that they would never develop the answer to in a backstory, because let's be real, who has ever written down the favorite color of their character? But
I'm certain I have one somewhere.
But definitely what it creates is making the players think about their characters. It's mainly used to make them get into character for the session, to get in the mindset, but then it also creates them thinking deeper on what that character actually is.
Yeah, I think at the end of it, the one thing I say is that people are more than just their station in life, their race and class, and the linear series events that happen to them. There are things that are deeper, that are only expressed through these moments and times that we would call gestures. The way they raise their voice in a certain moment because a certain thing hits them a certain way. The way they light up in another situation. Their face beams and they throw their hands above their heads. These are things that really reveal our essence, more than just a linear series of events that describe us.
One thing I just thought of was, while you were playing the Tomb of Annihilation, you created your backstory on things you had going through roleplay. This technique kind of feels like a little of improv.
Oh yeah, it's definitely improvisation.
You go off of things somebody else says and incorporate it into your character. It just came to my mind. I just had to annoy you guys with this. Sorry.
Of course, yep.
But I think we're nearing the end of our episode, and I think now would be the best time to summarize. Would you like to summarize your viewpoints on character creation?
I suppose Let me take a good stab at this. Move. Think of yourself as your character, projecting their hands out in a certain way at a certain time when a certain thought comes to them. Make them mumble. Explore the way they speak and think. And write those things down. Explore that in text. Because you will find that you are capable of finding all the great breadth of magnificent experiences that your character had as you played them. Just get to know your character and they'll tell you what their life was all about.
Very nice. So, CC, do you have anything to shout out?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're interested in this way of approaching character creation, the DMPC is Dead is definitely a way to play with it. It basically is a simulation of maybe about 4 adventures in a campaign, but it forces you to not have character details. You don't have a name, you don't have a race, you don't have a class. You are merely this amorphous body of feelings and sensations that you need to make sense of. And when you do, you'll be that much more committed to your character and the inter-character dynamics that they developed with everyone else. So check me out at @CC.dot on Twitter, at itch.io/CCRPG, and maybe kill a few NPCs for me, you know. No one likes DMPCs.
All right. You can find us as well on Twitter and Instagram at DoubleDM Pod. You can join our Discord server through our link tree on the pin post on our Twitter account. And with that, I think we have the episode wrapped up. And
fantastic.
Thank you, CC, for joining us and exploring all this interesting bits with us. And hear you on the next one. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hell yeah. Bye-bye.